Balloon Darling viewers, it's Jen here at Check Her Joy. This time I'm reviewing Mandela and the General. This is a graphic novel. It is written by Carlin and Oriol Malet, or I may have mispronounced those, and I'm sorry. Their names are going to be in the description below. So the story follows Nelson Mandela, who is this black South African leader. He was imprisoned for several years, and the graphic novel starts off when he is released in 1990. And he starts leading the African National Congress, something with a C. But this group of white and black South Africans who want a racially integrated country. But there's definitely a backlash in the white South Africans who are used to being in charge and who have been taught from the time that they are very young that they are superior to black South Africans just based on the race because they are white. And having that ingrained in your head from the time that you're very young is hard to combat and retrain yourself. So some of them get very, very militant and very angry. And so we have Mandela's ANC on one hand, and then we also have the General Viljoen, who used to be the head of all of South Africa's military. He retired, but then gets called back in to help with this transition. The white supremacists, I guess, are asking him to help, and he gets caught up in this whole conflict that spirals out of control. He didn't expect it to get as violent as it did, and so there's this definite threat that everything could just completely blow up, and it could be an actual bloodbath. And so Mandela and Viljoen end up meeting in private and in secret to try to calm tensions to the point where we can have an actual conversation and have a democracy rather than just having a civil war breakout and fighting. So we have these two different men on two different ends of the spectrum who both want what they see as best for South Africa, and for the most part they agree on the fact that they do not want South Africa to become this absolute horrid, bloody mess. So the story itself I found compelling and interesting, and it was a part of South African's history that I didn't know a whole lot about. I knew that Mandela had become the first black South African president, and I knew that he had been a leader of the apartheid. I knew that he had been imprisoned and stuff, but honestly, we didn't spend a lot of time studying South African history in the U.S. We had all of the United States, civil rights movement and slavery and everything, and the Civil War to deal with. So while we talked about race relations in school, we didn't talk about South Africa. And especially growing up in the late 90s to early 2000s in school, that was kind of more recent history than what we were studying in school. So I didn't know a whole lot about the intricacies of this, just kind of the overall end result, I guess. So it was interesting to see exactly how complicated things were and exactly what steps were taken to see it played out. It is told by Carlin, who had opportunities to interview both Mandela and Viljoen and Viljoen's twin brother at different points, both during when it was happening as a news correspondent and also after the fact and looking back on it with some retrospective. So it is a graphic novel, so there is art. It's kind of a sketched out, not completely formed art style to it, with a few accent colors to it, but it's not fully painted out. It's not my favorite art style, but I think it kind of works here because we're just looking at the sketch of history. We're not getting the whole picture. We don't know all the details, and we're just kind of overviewing it. So I think that not fully formed part also helps. Also, the black and white is more indicative of newspapers in my mind, and journalism. Some of the art in here can get a little bit gruesome. There was definitely some violence happening in South Africa at that time. So violence warning on this. So I do recommend this. This was a very compelling way to tell the story, and it was definitely a part of history that I didn't know a lot about and needed the fleshing out. Hi, cat. My cat's talking, if you can hear him. What do you want to say? Do you want to be in video? Okay, then. So I do recommend this book a lot. It's hard to give it a rating because of the subject matter. I think I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. But that's completely subjective. So I do recommend this book. It is really well executed. It was part of history that I really needed to know more about and didn't have a ton of background in. It's a good way of explaining history and having it laid out and having something visual, and making it more accessible. It also resonates strangely well in today's climate, like the political climate here in the US in 2019, with a lot of white supremacists in the US speaking out and feeling like having a backlash from that. So let me know in the comments below if you have read this and what you thought of it. And yeah, so peace out. I love you guys and keep reading. Bye.